Hi.
Hi.
Let me call Bob and everybody and tell them to try to log back in. I know Bob was going to try to call in.
I just admitted him.
Hey, Bob, Peter's on and I'm on. Did you want to try Zooming again?
I just tried on my phone and Peter was still circulating. I'll try on the pad again.
Okay, and I'll call Carol and Jackie. Bye.
Okay, bye.
Carol's coming in.
Okay, how about Jackie?
She didn't try again.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'm going to mute while I do this.
We're now recording.
Okay, maybe just make a notation of why we started late.
The meeting was started late due to technical difficulties. We apologize for any inconvenience they may have caused the citizens of Wellington. Anyway, we accepted the minutes of the February 16th meeting as presented.
February 17, Pete?
17th, sorry. I was reading that off an email I got on the 16th.
Okay.
All right, and anyway, now, present to speak, no presents. Finance, I don't think we've spent any money since the last meeting.
Nope.
Does that sound right, Carol?
As far as I'm aware, we didn't get any bills from anything printed for either the Taylor Pond Trail brochures or the QR. Are they working on the QR maps? I just noticed that in the minutes.
I don't think so. Not yet, right, Jackie?
We're gonna vote on that tonight, whether.
Yeah, right.
Oh, okay. Yeah, because I noticed there was something in the minutes about that, but that hasn't been given to them to do yet. So I probably should follow up with the Taylor Pond brochures though, because we've received those, right?
The guidebooks. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll follow up with them.
Okie doke. Thank you.
And I didn't. You guys went to the Board of Finance and on budget meeting. So I couldn't only report secondhand on that, but apparently our budget request was well received.
Seemed to get support when we were there, so I guess we're good with our humongous budget.
Yep.
Okay. Then too, Mason Road open space acquisition update. So we have things afoot that we want to talk about with regard to the financing, and we've had a delay in the availability of the grant, which prompted some of the consideration for some of these options. So Kathy, you want to tell us where we are there or what you've got?
Yeah, again, if you think back from last fall when we went to the Board of Finance and then we approached the Talmadge family, it was our understanding at that time that the grant applications, the new grant application round would open in December. And so we had told the family at that time that our timeline hope with them would be that, we would apply in December through May, because it would be due in May. And we would be here to regarding awards by April of 2022. And that we would that we would be able to hear by next fall, and then probably be able to close by April of 2022. But all of that has been pushed back about 6 months, because now Deep is saying that they're going to have a public input period during March regarding the application process and the application itself. And they're going to be announcing the new grant round in May instead of last December. So it pushes everything out 6 months. So if we apply, it would be due by October of this year. And then they take 6 months to make decisions, so they wouldn't make the announcements until April of 2022. And then if we did get an award, we receive a package and we have to submit other things before the funds are released. So we'd have to have the survey done, we have to have a title search done, we have to have other paperwork and documents sent to them, a bank account number has to be established for them to put the money in, and so on and so forth. So anyway, the timeline has been pushed back 6 months at least. The other issue that's come up is that the awards, they announced last year's applicants, the awards were announced in February, and they only gave between 30, some people got 30% and some people got 40%. There were 37 applicants, and about 1/3 of those got 40% of what the land cost was, and about 2/3 of them got 30%. Now that was mostly because they had such a large pool of applicants and they found all of the applications worthy of some type of an award, so they decided to just reduce the awards. So we don't know going forward. There's not any guarantee that the awards will be any higher than that going forward. And that was another thing that we had discussed with Board of Finance, CIP, and the Talmadge family, basically, that, you know, we're predicating a lot of our timeline and budgets based on that. So,
However, last time we went to the CIP committee one last time before they finalized the report, just to remind them that we couldn't, that the level of grant level could well be below the best case scenario of 50%, and they said not a problem. So I think the impression that I've gotten from CIP is that they are supporting us regardless of whether the grant, what percentage we might receive from the state.
mm-hmm. Okay.
So I think I feel comfortable with that, because you know, I talked to them in terms of should they footnote something in the CIP plan saying this is the highest percentage, you know, the highest amount of a grant we could receive. And it might well be lower than that. And it said, not necessary, we understand. And so I think they're willing to support us at a lower grant level if that should be the case.
They've gone to Board of Finance now already with their CIP recommendations. So now it's back in Board of Finance's hands. They are meeting tomorrow. They have a regular and a budget meeting tomorrow. And then the next meeting after that is going to be budget hearings on April 6th.
Mm-hmm.
Another regular meeting on April 15th. And then we have the town meeting on the 20th. So Carol, maybe you can help us understand, is that budget hearing when they make their final recommendations for the town meeting? You know?
The budget meeting is usually,
budget,
you know,
budget hearing.
but the budget, but the budget hearing is different. Budget hearing is where they hear comments on it. The budget meeting is usually deferred to referendum for vote. But in the past, the CIP plan has also been presented at the budget meeting, and I don't know whether it would be voted on then. It depends. In this environment, it's so difficult to know how things will be handled. But usually, the CIP plan is presented for a vote at the same time at the budget meeting, or has been in recent years, particularly since because of the regionalization, the school regionalization, and tying everything out so that the referendum can be at the same time as the referendum vote on the District 19 budget.
Okay.
So that's
So when you say budget hearing, Carol, are you talking about the town meeting where people can ask questions about
there
everything?
should be a budget hearing. Yeah, that's the hearing is
There's a budget hearing on the 6th. I'm looking at their schedule. Budget hearing on the 6th, a regular meeting on the 15th, and then the annual town meeting on the 20th.
Yeah.
So
the 20th would be that would be the meeting, I assume, that at which the CIP would be presented, but I can't speak to that, not the way things are going, because it also, there are all the logistics of how do you handle that in this environment.
Yeah, but I mean, the process is essentially the same in terms of what people can do, even if they have to Zoom in or call in or whatever kind of meeting. But I'm just trying to understand, what is the budget hearing then? Is that when people can make comments on just the regular budgets?
I believe so. Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
So one of the other things that we're not sure about, because we haven't gone back to the Talmadges. Remember, originally when we sent them the letter back in November last year, we said that our expectation is we would be able to close probably in the spring of 2022. Now, given the changes in the grant, we're talking about them waiting another 6 months before we would close, another 6 months before we would hear about the award, and another 6 months before we could close. So we don't know if the family's going to be willing to do that. That's the other thing we're not sure.
Yeah.
So we're trying to figure out, I think, is what's our next step? Do we go to the Board of Finance? We explain the grant timeline change and the award changes, the issues with the award, and just find out if they're still supportive of that.
Yeah, and we did indicate to them when we went, in one of the CIP meetings, we did indicate that there was a chance that this could roll into the following fiscal year because of the uncertainties associated with deadlines, change of deadlines with COVID. I think that, what we should be bringing both the Board of Finance and the family up to date with a changed timeline. That's what I think we ought to be doing at this point in time.
Well, and then what do we do about negotiating a price? Because
to be honest with you, given the appraisal results, I don't think we're in a very strong position to negotiate any significant change. And looking at the various scenarios that were presented, you'd have to have a fairly significant reduction in price for us to really come out, to make a big difference between that and between continuing to go ahead and apply for the state grant. And I have some concerns that we might be underestimating the reduction in legal fees. We might not, even though we wouldn't, if we did a private sale, we wouldn't need an A2 survey. That's not to say, well, what the selectmen, there might be advice from the land attorney that the selectman uses, that we should have a survey of some done, because they want to do I was sure they would want to do due diligence. So I'm a little concerned that the figures that if we're talking about doing it other than what we have been talking with people all along through the state grant application, that we might be well be underestimating how much it costs of legal fees, title search, survey, possible survey might be. And so I'm really reluctant to change course at this point because I don't think we could make that decision. I think that's a decision we would have to take to Board of Finance. And to be honest with you, they have shown significant support for this project as it's proposed, including that they understand that the town might have to put up more money if we got a lower percentage from the state. That's assuming we got a grant, which I think is there's a fairly good chance of that, because from the state's perspective, this is a low cost project, at whatever level, whether it's 30%, 50%, 40%, 50%, that what they're giving us, it's not a lot of money out of the pool of funds that will be available. But the only thing I think we should be doing at this point would be making people aware of the change in timeline. And I don't think it's necessary for us to, nor should we necessarily give the family the appraisal because it doesn't materially affect the asking price. I don't see that there's anything to be gained because we don't have anything much to offer other than change of timeline.
You're
And I
talking
think-
about in terms of
as a bargaining chip. And
again, I think those
Yeah,
scenarios.
regarding your comments, Carol, regarding the survey, yeah, I think the town would be smart to require an A2 survey in the purchase
Yeah.
in any case.
And
Whether the state required it or not, because now Joshua's trust, for example, is not going to take any properties or even conservation easements that don't have an A2 survey on them, which they're asking to be provided by the donor. But anyway, that's what they're saying about everything, because there's too much hassle down the road, possibly, without knowing exactly where you stand in terms of boundaries.
Yeah, that's that.
So I don't think we can write that up.
Yeah, I think we really, and if you look at the figures, if you add in some additional expenditures, you'd really have to the price would have to drop significantly, and I don't think they're going to be willing to do that. And I'm concerned about going back to the Board of Finance and the selectmen and say, oh guys, we've changed our mind, we want to do this differently. I think it's important that we let everybody know what the change of timeline is, and that we discuss that honestly and openly with the family. But I don't know that negotiation is going to have an effect. And I'd really like to get more solid figures on, or talk with the selectmen at least on what they would expect, whether they would want to do an A2 survey, then we have to plunk that money back into the picture. And then there's not that much difference. I don't think we can negotiate the price down enough to make the end result be any different from what we would get with even a 30% grant from the state.
Can I make two points?
Sure.
First of all, because we're delaying, I think it would be detrimental to not go with the family's request of $125,000. Secondly, did any of you attend the Board of Finance meeting last week when they discussed the CIP?
No.
No.
Okay, when
Just read the minutes.
CIP came up, they were going over the first year. That's the only thing that they're paying attention to, which includes the money for the open space purchase. Stu Cobb presented what you had presented to them, and asked if there, the Board of Finance chair asked if there was any questions from any of the board, and there was not a peep. So there shouldn't be any worry about how we're being supported by the Board of Finance and the CIP. CIP is done. They're just waiting for Board of Finance to approve. They had zero questions about what you folks had presented to them insofar as dollars and cents. Maybe it makes sense to go to the Board of Finance and let them understand about the timeline. But other than that, it looks like we've got 100% backing by both the CIP, which they've finished their work, and now all we have to do is make sure that Board of Finance understands our changed timeline. And I think we don't want to make too many waves with this. I
Right.
think we're where we should be with our support.
One of the other things that came up for Peter and I is, as you both know, Peter and I plan to be away most of the summer. And I wasn't counting on trying to write a grant through the summer. And that is one of my big concerns right now, is how are we going to write this grant?
Yep.
I'm not saying that I was going to be the one to write it totally. You guys have always helped, but somebody else might have to step up to the plate and be the primary mover on writing the grant. Then we might be able to get a little bit of help from land use in terms of having maps made and so on. But,
Yeah.
It's been 2 years of taking care of my mother-in-law. Everybody has their issues, but
Oh, absolutely.
I would like my summer.
Oh, I understand that.
Yeah.
I understand that.
That was a problem when this got moved, for me anyway.
So my point, I think, is that we've applied for these grants before. We have to have some kind of information to use as a template for the preparation of this.
I'd be happy to start working on the grant this spring. And because so much of we're talking about a parcel that abuts parcel that the properties that we've already received grants for. The information on and the arguments for why this is an important piece of property, we could actually start working on a lot of that stuff. I know there are things like letters of support and all of that, but this is a commission responsibility. And I for one, would be happy to step up and help in the process, and perhaps, even see about getting some things of the informational and persuasive arguments that part of the application we could start working on any time. I think we could take some of our prior grants and just edit them, and with the detailed information specific to this parcel.
Right.
But the overall arguments in terms of protection of watershed and Yukon water supply and the Willimantic River and all of that stuff is pretty much the same for this parcel as it was for the other two.
I don't disagree with you, Carol. That's actually the easy part, because we do have, and Bob, you're right, we have templates. They may change the application. There's more, and this is what I'm being told, there's more emphasis now on climate change and how this parcel, you have to document how this parcel will be contributing to climate resilience and adaptation, because that's the whole new big thing in the governor's budget, and the focus for DEEP. So there's new things. I mean, the last grant we wrote was in 2008.
Yeah.
So the application, and they're looking for input. They haven't, see, here's the other thing. They said they were going to do this in March, start to look for input from the public. They haven't even put out any information about that yet. So are they really going to come out in May and say, okay, we're ready for you guys, here's the new application?
No.
So everything's been pushed back. I mean, the town is still waiting on the STEEP grant.
Are they still?
Still,
yeah.
And so, again, we can start a lot of this, and I'm willing to help with all of that too. It's just that there's a lot of other pieces to this. I encourage you both, or anybody who's interested in working on this, or I can send you the link for what the application looked like last year. And
Okay,
all of the stuff that you have to provide and put together. You have to get all the minutes from the town that relate to support. You have to get all copies of all the financial information for the town. You have to do all these support letters. You have to get letters from your legislators, from CROG. You have to document how this fits with the new state of Connecticut plan of conservation. How does it align with your own plan of conservation as well as your regional conservation plan through CROG? I mean, there's a lot to it. It's not hard. It's just that if I was trying to do this from Vermont, I couldn't do it. I don't have a
no,
computer
Kathy,
there.
you need your time away,
Yeah.
and you and Pete both. No, I don't think there's any argument with that. But I think that, and it's not an easy process. And it sounds like it's getting more complicated all the time. When you throw in the climate change stuff, it puts.
Well, and going down the road, we can do the best we can, and that's all we can do. And I'm confronted with that when we do grants for the Historical Society. It's like you're taking the test and you want to score as many points as you can when the document is done.
Right.
And you can only do the best job you can.
Yeah.
Because there's always somebody that's going to be out there that might be doing a little bit better job than you are with all the finite details. But
particularly people that have.
That's how the game's played.
Yeah, particularly people that have professional staff to assist them in that process. And that which we don't. There are there's some minor things that we could go ahead and do. We could go ahead and take this proposed thing to planning and zoning for approval under 824, and that's it's a very small piece, but that's something that could be done, and get something from them. Then that's what check off the minutes of the Planning and Zoning Commission under 824, that kind of thing. So maybe we could have a brainstorming session at work session, and we could look at what we can use and what's new and different. And I'd be happy to, if you could want to send the information, Kathy, I'd be to look at. But I'd be willing to help in any way that I can.
Well, I think what I would like to hear is somebody.
We need to start a master checklist of all the items we need. Stuff from last year, plus anything that's turned up from any applications this year, and get a master checklist.
Right.
All right, back to a couple other things. I'm glad to hear that that a couple of you were saying that let's just move forward with the plan we've got, because that's kind of what I was thinking too, that looking at all the stuff, all the charts, if we go to we can't go to Board of Finance with a spreadsheet like this. Their eyes will glaze over and just say, put a proposal on the table. We're not going to try to juggle these things,
right,
and try to figure out what's best. So and Carol's right. I think in the big picture, there's not that much difference, by almost nickel and dime the sales price on that. And given the support that we seem to have on the boards, let them find the money. This isn't a $500,000 purchase we're coming to them with. Even if they had to foot the whole 125, that's still a reasonable price for the property. So,
and we don't have.
Just go with informing both parties of the timeline and say we're on a hold until we get grant information. Meanwhile, we'll start looking to prepare for the grant when a proposal comes out, and we'll hope for the best on that, and hope you'll consider just holding on, and as the process moves along. I mean, not that if we wanted to, I don't think things change in negotiations anyway, and if we had to go back, and it's not like we're wishy-washy, because things have changed, and we could argue that in a negotiation process, things change on both sides, and you may need to reestablish a new position or new plan. But I guess I would say, let's just go forward with what we've got, apply for the grant, and not make a big deal about the selling price.
Okay.
I'd be happy to follow through on things like, chasing down letters of support, and, organizational stuff like that is something that I'm good at. And, I don't mind putting some time in. And we don't have any particular plans for the summer, except for a week in June, when we hope to be in Maine with our family, our daughter and her family.
Sure.
But other than that,
Yeah, I know
come
there's
up-
things that, I think I was writing letters to the Willimantic Waterworks and to Joshua's Trust and places like that to get support. And those are all, I'm sure, on the record, and we can just
Oh, yeah, we have it.
update those and send
yeah.
those out to the
It's
parties.
somebody though to coordinate all of that, gather everything, make sure everything's getting done on time. We need a project leader is what I'm saying. And I'm not sure I can commit to be that person this summer. That's what I'm trying to say. And if somebody else thinks that they can do that, I'd be happy to help, but I don't think I can be a lead person on this year if it's going to be through the summer.
and
Just being honest.
yeah.
Well,
and
let's just see how much we get done and see how much falls out by the time summer comes, and then
Right.
see where we are at that point.
Yeah, but I as far as is it, checking off is this thing in, is that thing in, what do we need to do to get, who do we need to contact, where can we find out that, I think this bit, how to adding the climate change thing is really strange. It's an additional burden on applicants, and I don't know how do you prove that, Jackie? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I was gonna ask Kathy, do you know what they're requiring for that?
Well, I guess there's research from the Nature Conservancy, and they've come up with some maps of the country and areas that they feel that will be more resilient, and some of it's kind of local and regional to a state, and some of it's just kind of generalized. So you have to justify how that parcel, that you get more points, if you will, if you can show that. So again, the larger the parcel, typically the more resilient it will be to climate change too. And there's different kinds of soils and weather conditions and so on and so forth. So there is some mapping on a national level from the Nature Conservancy. But
they don't say exactly what they want you to submit as far as proving any of this, or
they want you to justify how this parcel will help with, climate adaptation and be more resilient to climate change. You just have, it doesn't have to be a book. It's probably a paragraph. But
okay.
I'm just
Well,
saying,
there is this thing called Climate Adaptation Workbook, which I've gone through before. It's basically a website where you answer a bunch of questions about a particular property. They ask you all these things about, do you think it's particularly susceptible to erosion from erratic storm events, or, lots of different questions that they ask you. And then it spits out this like 30-page report, which I never found particularly useful, but it throw at someone, and kind of show that it does, explain a lot of different factors regarding climate change and how that property may be resilient or be able to adapt.
But one of the things I think we have going for
Yeah, Joshua's Trust. That's a buzzword and land use. Joshua's was incorporating those ideas into its strategic land use plan. The resiliency was coming in, but I would think also that outfits like, you mentioned Audubon or maybe Nature Conservancy, that but I would think maybe CLCC would have some ideas, documentation, outlines, something to focus on that what people could point to in terms of preserving their land.
This workbook, adaptation workbook, is through the Forest Service and the Northern Institute of Applied Climate Science. So it's what's being used by people in the forestry industry. But anyways, I'd be happy to kind of fill that out for that property as
Okay.
best I can.
Well,
See if
what I,
so that we
That would be great.
put it in the application.
what I see it is this piece is, I'm a jigsaw puzzle person, right? So I see this piece as being sort of the key to link the Knowlton property across the street with the existing Talmadge property and the Yukon forest. And this is the piece that if it were to be developed would change the linkage between those parcels, because this is the piece that links Knowlton right across the road with Yukon forest, with the existing Talmadge property. And if we don't have this piece, then it has an effect on the whole, having a whole parcel, extensive parcel that's protected.
Again, I think
any sense?
the parcel's definitely worthy of a grant. And I think that it was easy to justify the characteristics and score well in those areas. That's not my concern. My concern is the process of putting together the application and the amount of time that's going to take. And if we get a 30% grant award on a $125,000 property, we're basically going to get $37,000. It's a lot of work and a lot of time, and we're volunteers. We're not paid people. And I love this idea of getting this property. I agree with you. I think it's that jigsaw puzzle piece that we have to put in there. I'm the biggest advocate for getting this done. I'm just not sure. I'm just feeling a little worried about my ability to contribute during the summer.
Yeah, and I understand that, and I fully appreciate that, Kathy. I think all of us are happy that you and Chris can go off to Vermont and enjoy yourselves, because we know how difficult things have been for you. And that's why I'm willing to step up and do what I can.
I would just offer one other scenario. Peter can take his green hat off. We'll pass the hat and see how close we come to 35 grand. And we won't have to do any work. I'm serious.
It would be wonderful if there was some magnanimous person in town that just wanted to, donate to the open space fund. I just don't see that happening.
Well, no.
But anyway, so
not to the tune of 35,000 all at once.
So again, Peter, I don't mean to, step up and step in here, but so what we're suggesting is that tomorrow at the Board of Finance meeting, we just go forward and we explain the timeline change, and we get in touch with the family and tell them the timeline change, and just find out if they're willing to hang in there for the extra 6 months or so that it could be.
Yeah.
Okay. And then
That's what I think.
Okay. And then what is the timeline for putting a purchase and sales agreement together for that $125,000? Like, when do we do that part of it? Do we wait until the grant is announced? And who's going to be available to help the attorney and the town kind of work out the purchase and sales after May?
Yeah, that was one of the questions that I had too, about the time schedule for the Knowlton property. There was specific and presented to the town, unless we got a grant of at least X dollars. I think it was 250,000. And I don't know whether it's feasible to do that. We could work out, we could put in an agreement that looks at 30,000? Do they give grants less than that, or do we don't know? Is that unknown?
Well, this was probably the first year in a long time that they gave 30 or 40%. It was usually, closer to 50%. Some was less. One year we got 49%.
Yeah, but
But
when I say 50%, I'm talking, ballpark.
yeah. But Carol, you made a good point, and Bob too, that it looks like CIP and Board of Finance are like, it's okay, we're committed to 125,000. If we get the grant, great. If we don't, we don't. I mean, they're not saying, okay, you can only do this if you get a grant of a certain amount. So
if we don't get a grant, we can always revisit this. But I certainly at this point, I don't think it's productive to try and nickel and dime the family in terms of because in my opinion, it wouldn't make any difference unless we could talk them down to 100, and I don't think that's going to happen.
Right.
And given the appraisal figures, I don't think we're in a strong position to look for significant reductions in price.
Well, when you're asking the family to wait another 6 months, you're not going to go and beat them up on price either.
No,
I mean,
exactly.
that's ridiculous. That's ridiculous.
We're not in a strong bargaining position.
No, not at all.
So we're going to go to the Board of Finance tomorrow and tell them the timeline change. And then what do? We go to the family, we write a letter and explain the timeline change, and that
Yes.
the town seems willing to move forward with 125,000 if we get a grant, but we don't say how much we have to get of the grant.
No, just if we get a grant, and if we were not to get a grant, at that point, we could also say, okay, guys, either you put it on the market or let's see if we can negotiate something at that point. But I don't know where else to go, but I'm really reluctant to bait and switch on people and say, well, we've decided to do things differently.
Having listened to both boards from the very beginning, they've got our back and they've got the price for us too. Don't be, distracted. And that's all I'm going to say. You have to stop and think about what was said in those meetings early on. Board of Finance especially, where they were going to possibly find money. And they haven't said that wouldn't work for them to this point. CIP, the same thing. An awful lot of support. They've got the money for us. Nobody's come back to us and says, well, you really have to do. No. Stand firm, tell them about the time change, and let's go to work.
Do we also let them know that what the awards came in for this year, just so they're aware?
It has no bearing on what we're trying to do.
No, but I think
we should tell them that anyway.
I think we should tell them what the range of percentages was this year. That doesn't hurt to tell them that, but we went back one last time for CIP when they were having their final meeting, just to, from my point of view, particularly to address possible lower percentage and whether that should be disclosed in the CIP document. And they said, don't worry about it, basically. So I think we just
that's my point.
Stay the course at this point.
Yeah, and you never know if we go there and say, well, it might only be 30%. Someone may have a burst of magnanimity and say, well, if all we're going to get is 30%, why don't we just close the deal now?
Well,
possibility. You never know.
Well, there is that.
You're still thinking about passing your hat.
We might be able to go to the beach tomorrow too. Yeah.
But you just don't know. But I don't want us to be changing our course at this point because of we've come forth with a proposal based on a certain And Kathy, you need to promise us that you will go to Vermont and enjoy yourself and not spend all your time worrying about stuff. And we can give you weekly reports.
Well,
No,
here's the thing.
I don't think we're, it's a matter of us reversing, changing our proposal, changing our plans. Well, we are, but based on new information. So I don't have any problem doing that. But I don't think that maybe it's necessary. I don't know, what do we got? 3.5 hours left on the 17th. Maybe if I leave this out tonight, maybe it'll be full of gold in the morning.
There we go.
Okay, so the plan is to stick with what we've proposed at this point and just update people on the change of timeline and just see, and then we could see what kind of reaction we get to those folks.
Right. All right, we can do that. We're not on the agenda for Board of Finance, but we can speak up, I guess, at present to speak.
Well, you did request on Monday. Maybe Mike just assumed that.
I did, but it's not on the agenda.
I noticed that, not specific, but maybe it's under old business.
Yeah.
Anyway, but
anyway, if you email Mike and say, could we have 5 minutes just to fill you in on the latest in terms of timeline?
All we can do is present to speak.
Yeah, it's under present to speak.
Okay.
Yep.
But it's a long,
Again.
I would say keep it short, like 5 minutes, because they have, if you think this is a big issue for them, there are plenty of other issues coming before them, including purchase of
I
a
think
school
we
building.
can do it in 2 minutes just to say that the grants, I think we can summarize the grant situation and question is, we haven't told them what the appraisal came in, but.
I don't think we need to, and I think all we need to,
Well, I think we do. I mean,
I think we need to say.
The town is paid for the appraisal. I would think they'd want to know or be entitled to find out what they got for their money.
Well, I think that we can say without saying it came out to exactly. I think we could come at it indirectly. I don't think we need to copy people on this. We could say that it's consistent with the figures that we had submitted for the cost of the
That's weaseling around what they paid their money for too.
But Carol, why would we keep it quiet if we're going to basically, we're not negotiating, we're not using it for negotiation. So what does it matter if we just say it came in?
Doesn't matter.
Yeah,
But,
yeah. I'd rather be transparent, and then if somebody wants to look at the appraisal because the town paid for it, they should be able to.
Absolutely.
Who? But why someone? Who do you mean?
No. I mean, if the Board of Selectmen, the Board of Finance want to see it,
that's fine.
Yeah.
The town owns the document. The town the document, appraisal document is very specific in that the client is considered to be the town of Wellington,
Right.
and the deep for the purposes of a grant application. So, but I don't think we need to disclose it outside of the town organizations, and I don't know that needs to be disclosed in a public meeting necessarily. I think people can draw their own conclusions from what the conversation we've had at this meeting. Anyway,
Well,
just saying that we will. You can say we'll be happy to send you the summary pages of the report and the detailed report.
I guess we can just use the weasel words and say it's in line with the selling price, and we'll be glad to forward you a copy of the document.
Yeah, that would be fine. I have no problem disclosing within town government. I have some issues perhaps with disclosing.
Okay, got that.
Okay, that's
all right. So you can take 2 minutes at tomorrow night to summarize that.
Okay.
Summarize where we are.
And then in terms of the timeline of the purchase and sales agreement, let me just go through this just one more time. So we're going to have a referendum on the CIP and the town budget on the 4th of May. So that's when the town,
I don't think the CIP is not part of the budget. what will go to referendum
Yeah.
will be the budget for 21, 22. The CIP thing would probably be voted on. And that's the clarification that we can get outside of a meeting from the finance board, to exactly what's happening when and when the CIP will be voted on.
Okay, so you think that's separate
This
from the town
CIP
meeting?
is separate. The CIP is entirely separate from the town budget.
Who
That's
votes on the
correct.
CIP?
It's voted on in town meeting, and the town meeting, I think, but Bob, you correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is that because they know the budget's going to go to referendum anyway, there would be no vote on the budget at the budget meeting, but there would be a vote on other items on the agenda of the budget meeting, and one of those has been the vote on the CIP plan. But I can't answer that definitively. That's something you could ask, but you don't have to do that in a meeting. We can make sure that we know the schedule. We could talk to Donna, we could talk to, Mike, should clarify with Mike or whatever, to find out exactly, we have a clear understanding of the timeline and the process. And I don't know how they're going to handle the budget meeting and other meetings anyway. That's a headache for the Board of Selectmen to deal
Right.
with.
But the
quite frankly.
dates
So
are set. The dates are set. So I'm looking at the timeline of when we need to then put a purchase and sales. Do we need to tell the family we can't move forward with a purchase and sales agreement until two things happen? One is the town approves the CIP budget, and two, that we know that there's a grant application round starting. Because we need to talk to the family too and let them know some of these things. So that's why I'm asking for clarification.
yeah, I don't think we have to decide that tonight, but I think that it would be appropriate to check what the timeline is and when the vote will be on the CIP plan. And I don't know that they can give you answers on that at this point. Those meetings don't have to be called, until they have to be called.
It seems to me that with the CIP, with the conversation that was going on last week, when the CIP was, the first year the CIP was brought to the Board of Finance, the Board of Finance is the one that is going to approve the CIP budget as presented. They're only looking at the first year. The other 4 years are further out in the future. The first year is important to the Board of Finance because they have to base their budget on what the CIP has pushed forward in their plan.
Mhm.
So if there's not any pushback from the Board of Finance, what's in the CIP, there's very little that's going to be said about what's in the CIP. That's usually what I've seen over the years. Most of the conversation about the CIP takes place at the Board of Finance. When I was able to wangle that extra money last year, the year before, it never went to the town. It was approved by the Board of Finance when they were reviewing the CIP for that first year.
Yeah, but I believe that there was a requirement that the CIP plan has to be approved by whatever the budget making authority of the town is. And that's a town meeting. And I know that the CIP plans have always gone to town meeting. So I think we need to seek clarification, Kathy, so that we know when we need to be present and speak to that issue. But I can't answer that question tonight. And that's a question that can be resolved. We don't have to bring that up at the finance board meeting. We can get clarification on that from other sources outside of meetings. And I think I want to keep as low a profile as possible in those meetings, because I know how those poor people have been working with extra meetings, CIP and finance and special meetings for a couple of months now. And so I think we want to take up as little of their time as we possibly can.
I understand. I just, you know, for us to move forward, we have to understand what the process will be and when we have to do certain things, because we're working not only with the town boards, we're also working with this family who's waiting to hear back from us. And
Well, all we could tell them is what we know about the change of timeline at this point. We can find out when there will, you know, at some point, we're going to have to actually go to a town meeting, because just because something is in the CIP plan does not necessarily mean that that it's approved. The purchase, there will have to be a town meeting that says, yeah, we're going to accept the recommendation of the CIP plan to go ahead with this project. And at that point, then we have to deal with that. But that's not an issue I can't. I'm prepared to deal with tonight.
okay, I'm just not clear who to get some answers, because we do need at some point to be able to give the family more than information than just that the grant has been pushed back 6 months.
Yes, I understand that, Kathy, but I can't give you an answer on that tonight. I can't.
Oh, okay, I know. I'm not asking you to give me an answer. I just mean, who do we need
I
to
think
get?
that information is available, but because of the whole issue of calling meetings, particularly town meetings in the current COVID environment, I can't answer those questions. Those answers are going to have to come from probably the selectmen.
I think we can just, I think we'll just have to tell them at this point that the grant announcements have all been put off, and put that timeline in, and just tell them we'll keep you apprised of as things develop in the town regarding approval of moving forward with this, and blah, blah, blah. We'll come up with something, but just tell them that the grant, the whole grant program is pushed down the road, and we hope they understand and continue to
And we are still
to
very
work
much
with us.
interested in, and the town is very much interested in purchasing the property. And
Right.
if they're willing to hang in there a little bit.
We'll get something out to them in the next few days or so. Okay.
And is that okay with everyone if Peter puts a letter together and sends it around?
Absolutely.
Okay,
I think we have to play both sides of the coin on this with the town and with the family, letting them know what we've talked about tonight. We've decided that, yes, we have to, our point is that there's been delays, so our timeline is stretched out. Board of Finance needs to know that, the family needs to know that. And I think it's critical that we get both of those out as soon as we possibly can.
Any other
Because
comments or discussion on this topic then? Bob, I'm sorry to cut you off.
No, I'm well done.
No, you're usually more rare, Bob.
We're being recorded.
Oh, sorry. Okay then. Fenton Ruby Management Plan Update. Does that need to be on the menu here still? Where are we on that? We're just,
That's waiting for a town meeting to get the money approved from Park and Rec Fund
oh,
to pay for it.
I have a feeling we're gonna end up waiting until the referendum. When they may have to put that on the same, is the referendum, can it only be for the budget, or?
They can, when they have the budget meeting, there can be other things on the agenda. One of the things we might want to do is, if they want to include that Park and Rec stuff and open space, we might want to just ask them to reduce the dollar amount for the appraisal money to what we actually spent on the appraisal. Reduce it from the 5 down to the 3750, which is now a known.
But Carol, excuse me, what we're gonna need though is we're gonna need money to do the purchase and sales at some point. So this is the other sticky wicket.
Either that, so, or we can say, before they call that meeting, we can ask for the 5,000 to be for appraisal and legal fees. And I don't
That
have no
won't
idea
pay, that won't pay for the purchase and sales agreement, Carol, the
How much
extra
is-
money. No,
how much.
it's, we were talking about $25,000 for all the legal fees. A lot of that's going into the purchase and sales agreement because it's very complicated. I don't know what it cost the last time, but for the Knowlton, all the legal fees were $18,000. I haven't, well, we never saw an invoice that had everything broken down, but the purchase and sales document is one of the largest documents. You know, I can't imagine it's only going to cost, you know, $1,700, which would be the balance from the 5,000. And
Well, it's
you know, what
actually 1250.
so if you could noodle on that a little bit more about what we can recommend that they call for a meeting to be able to pay for, because eventually we're going to have to pay for all the legal fees. And maybe that's the whole call for the meeting will be to use the open space fund for legal and survey once they approve the purchase of the property. What do you think about that?
I think we should take
think
and we should be all in with all the money that's in the open space. We need to push that forward, let them free that up so it's available for us to use. We can use that up and then we can start asking the town through the Board of Finance to start paying at that point. But we need to be upfront with the money that we have in the open space fund now.
So what has been basically been committed is that we have said, you know, I'm not going to say we're going to spend it down to the last 85 cents. And I don't think that's prudent. And what we built in, we asked for 5 for the appraisal. We know that, and we've already said we're going to give back the $1,250. We've already said that. That was a decision you guys made, and that's been done. So we've committed $37.50. We asked only for appraisal money in that original motion, and I don't think we can go and ask. We've plugged in 60,000. We had $65,755 to start with. So we are committed to the extent of $63,750 in what we've already asked for. And how we cannot use additional funds until we get something from town meeting. So perhaps we just need to sit down with the selectmen and the first selectman and talk about how we're going to handle this. Because we were looking for a stopgap, we were looking primarily for the appraisal. That's all that was in what we requested. So it would require some adjustment if we could get some idea of the costs. And this is something that we talked about doing, but I don't think happened, is to get an estimate from the attorney that the town plans to use on what the cost would be of a purchase and sales agreement. Then we might be in a position to go soon to the selectmen and say, look, there's been a delay. Can we increase the amount of the request from the open space fund to cover both the appraisal and drawing up of a purchase and sales agreement, and increase the amount of the appropriation? That I can't see us going beyond that at this point. Not until a town meeting has been called to vote on the entire project. You're forgetting that it's fine for CIP for finance and CIP to tell us that they'll support this project, but it's not going to fly until it's been voted on by the town in a town meeting, the whole project.
Carol, would you be willing to work with the Board of Selectmen on this issue of the legal stuff? Because Peter and I have each sent emails to to the first selectman and not gotten any responses for questions. So if you want to try to work on that
I don't,
part
you
of
know,
it, I mean, originally, the first selectman did tell me that it's $200 an hour is what the land attorney charges. But until they look at the past document, for example, that past purchase and sales agreement, and look at the complexity of it, I don't think they're going to be able to tell us exactly how much it's going to cost to put one together. Besides the fact that it's a back and forth process with the attorney on the other side. So if there's issues with the other attorney, it's going to go back and forth, and that costs money every time
yeah.
our attorney looks at it. So,
Right.
so
Every 15 minutes is an hour.
Yeah.
Something
So
like that.
I think in general, it's going to be difficult. Maybe they can give you a range. But as far as that $5,000 initially that they were going to put, take from the open space fund and allow us to use for the appraisals, and trying to use what's left of that for a purchase and sales agreement, is what I was trying to say is I don't think that'll cover it.
No, I don't think so. I don't think so either, Kathy. But
Yeah.
if we want to put together a purchase and sales agreement now, or do we want to wait until, I don't know.
I think we shouldn't spend any money on it until two things happen. One is that the townspeople vote to accept the CIP recommendations, and number two, that the open space grant funds, the new application period is announced.
Mm-hmm.
So that's going to have to be after, middle of May probably. And whether or not, then that's going to mean calling a town meeting to appropriate the open space funds for the legal fees. And I think when we do that, we should just go for the whole enchilada, all the legal fees for the whole process and the survey. Like Bob was saying, just say, that we can commit so much money, we can use our estimates that it's going to cost. I believe, I forget exactly for both, but
Yeah, 25 for legal fees and 11 for A1 survey.
so up to $36,000 out of the open space.
Rounded up to 40.
Yeah. So I'm thinking that would
this is
be
all estimates, and I think that's true also of other things that are in the CIP plan. Figures have been presented, and they may, if you're buying a truck, you may know exactly what truck you're going to be, or you may be going out to bid and you may be taking the best price that you get, but you're not going to know that until, the fact that something's in CIP doesn't mean they're going to spend exactly the amount that's shown in the CIP for XYZ as
right. But what we know for sure, if we're saying tonight, we're going to say to the Talmadge family, okay, $125,000, and that's what they put in CIP for the land, hoping that we get a grant. The $60,000 that you put in the CIP budget when you were developing that was really for the additional costs that included the legal fees and the survey.
Well, it's all one big package with a total cost for the purchase of $164,750.
Right.
Okay, if you look at the scenario sheet, the adjusted scenario sheet. So basically, we would be using up $63,750 of the $65,700 that's in the CIP and in the open space fund. So we'd be basically taking it down, but not to the last penny. And I don't want to adjust that 60,000 figure that we plugged in there, because what I was doing at that time was taking the 5 that we were asking for from the appraisal.
Yeah.
And at the time that we presented the CIP request, and adding 60 to it and saying, okay, that's going to leave us with, $755 and change. And now that's increased somewhat because of the lower cost of the appraisal. But I don't think we can resolve any of that tonight. I think it's going to take more work And I think we can sort out, I think we know what we need to do. We need to find out timelines. We need to see what the selectmen are they going to try and roll everything into one meeting? Are they planning on having multiple meetings for other things? They still don't know. If they still don't know about steep, then some of this could probably be put on the same meeting as other things. And some things might be able to be put on the budget meeting, but we're not going to resolve that tonight. And frankly, I think we need to move on to other things on our
Yeah.
agenda.
Okay, I'm sorry, I don't mean to beat a dead horse. It's just that we only meet once a month. The Board of Selectmen, if they suddenly got that steep grant and wanted to call a town meeting, you know, how are we gonna be, you know, wait a minute, hey, we wanna be part of that. This is why I'm saying we have to start having conversations about this now, because we're getting to a point where they're looking at hybrid meetings. They're looking at, you know, putting together town meetings. So, you know, somehow we have to have a conversation with somebody.
Yes, we do,
Yeah.
and that has to happen. I don't know that, you know, who should be author, how we're going to handle that. One thing we can do, Kathy, we don't have to meet once a month. We could, if necessary, call a special meeting to discuss this, but it doesn't hurt to have a general conversation with the selectmen around the issue of meetings, town meetings, when they might be, and what would be appropriate to put on those agendas. And
So when you say have a discussion with the Board of Selectmen, do you mean get on the Board of Selectmen agenda?
no, I mean, talk with the first selectman and find out what they're, you know, no, we don't want to take time in a selectman's meeting. This is the kind of thing where you would somebody would talk with the first selectman and try and find out what they have in mind and what the timing might be and when we might be able to take some of these issues forward, and whether we at that time could increase the amount, increase the appropriation from that we were asking for from 5,000 to 15,000, and have it say appraisal and legal fees. And that would be giving us, you know, almost half of a substantial portion, 40% of the amount that we're budgeting for legal fees, which I hope would be sufficient to cover a purchase and sales agreement.
Well, why wouldn't we ask for all the money up front for the survey and everything? I just don't understand. But
because we don't even need the money for the survey unless we get a grant, or unless we're going to,
okay.
What we would be doing, or what we would be, or I don't think we're prepared at this point to take the entire package to a town meeting because of the uncertainties about the grant process. So I think,
Yeah.
we can, you know, if necessary, we could call a special meeting just to discuss this issue. But I don't think we can deal with this tonight. I honestly don't.
Not tonight, no.
Could I ask, I just want to make one comment, if you would. How many of you have attended virtual selectmen's meetings in the past 2 months? Okay, Kathy, you have. One of the things that continually comes up is Eric is trying to understand how they are going to proceed with a necessary town meeting to accept the budget. The timeline's already set when the referendum is going to take place. She has been in contact with the state. The legislature has to adjust certain things to allow for a hybrid town meeting. Otherwise, they quote unquote technically can't have a town meeting. And she's got them working on a timeline faster than they had hoped for, because nobody realized when our referendum is scheduled for.
And we have to have the town meeting and adjourn it to adjourn the budget. They have to at least have a town meeting on the budget so they can adjourn that to the referendum.
Absolutely.
necessary
So that,
process.
this is the thing that the legislature, you know, this is beyond the governor, this is beyond the selectmen. The legislature has to come out with a ruling to allow us to have some kind of a town meeting, hybrid.
Or they have to do what they did last year. Or did they?
And there's
Which
an awful
allowed,
lot of
which allowed
people
the
against
selectmen
that.
to approve the budget. What happened last year? I don't even
Yeah, I
remember.
know, but it's not gonna happen this year.
This year, right. So this is why there needs to be some discussion, and I think our needs are quite frankly, we're not, but at this point, I don't know that we have to, that we can deal with any of this, and certainly not tonight at tonight's meeting. So I move that we move on. Let's move on the rest of our agenda, and
Okay, thanks.
perhaps Pete, can we? Let's talk about. I think probably ought to be somebody else besides me, but I'd be happy to go along to sit down with Erica to talk about this, but I don't think we can. I don't want to be the point person for it.
All right. We'll see where we go. Move
But
on
I'll
to
ask
tonight
about-
anyway. We're pouring out the topic tonight, I think.
Yeah.
Okay. Easement monitoring, Daleville School, Pinecrest. Jackie, have you done anything on those yet? Or
So
did
I
you?
went to Daleville School. I really didn't find any new boundaries. Many of the boundaries are in the swamp.
No, yeah.
Yeah. I remember that one.
So I did take a walk with one of the abutters. I forget, I'm drawing a blank on his name at the moment, but he showed me one boundary monument, which was a stone pile on his property boundary. And then we found 2 pins and barbed wire, which one of the pins and the barbed wire were on the map that it looked like Peter and Kathy had made back in 2009, I think it was.
A while ago.
Yeah, and but then, anyways, I'll send you the map. But basically, it was no new information, and it was really not very clear. Most of the boundaries were. We looked around for monuments for a while, and there wasn't really any obvious differences between, the abutting landowners' land use and the conservation land. Seemed like there wasn't any encroachment.
No significant encroachments there. Okay, well,
There was
maybe
a hunting stand close to a boundary, but it didn't seem like it was over the boundary.
And I remember a number of years ago where there were some signs of ATV activity, but that may have changed because I don't know whether there's been change of ownership of any of the abutting properties, which might have had an effect on that.
Yeah, it didn't seem like there were any active trails. There's one corner that's kind of right up next to the swamp, and it seems like the abutter kind of uses his property or her property right up to the line, but basically just they're haven't done anything destructive or anything, and it doesn't seem like they've gone over the line. So
good. Well, it's good we don't have any issues we have to deal with.
no, it doesn't seem like it, although like I said, the boundaries were not totally
Yeah.
clear. But just based on, I did use a GPS file from the town tax maps, so I was able to see what the approximate boundaries were on my GPS.
Okay, good,
And I
good.
used my compass, so, and just using that and finding the few monuments that I did find, based on all of that information, didn't seem like there.
Okay,
So
yeah.
And I have not gone
Great.
to the
Thank you.
Pinecrest yet, but I'm hoping to do that in the next couple weeks because I did send out the abutter letters. But then we got a bunch of snow right after I did that. So
Oh,
I'm going out
Weather's
there.
not
But now,
cooperative.
okay,
We skipped,
great.
we skipped C.
I move that we table C to our next meeting.
Okay,
Oh, Tolbert, oh, yeah,
which
right,
was
I did skip. Sorry,
Can we move that or just informally say we're going to move that to next month's meeting?
why don't we do that? I'm not sure there's a whole bunch we're gonna do with that at this point, other than just, say we looked at it, but from what I've seen, there's not a lot that we may want to or need to do at this point, other than just to indicate that we reviewed it and see. But anyway, we'll see what we have for comments. But yeah, we're clock is ticking. Why don't we leave that for tonight? Kathy? Yeah.
no, I just wanted to quickly say regarding that, Jackie mentioned that she may be willing to look at the past timber cruise data that was done by Conwood, at least to get a general idea of how
Yeah.
much volume of wood we're
Yeah.
talking about if we move forward with any kind of timber harvest, whether it be we'd make any money or whether we'd lose money, so to speak. So she said she'd be willing to work on that.
Right.
Maybe she can let
yeah,
us
I did
know.
actually. I ended up having time to put those numbers together, but based on what they were recommending for removal, not really based on the total volume, but based on what they were recommending, which it seemed like it was about the same for each stand. It was like a 1.5 to 2,000 board feet per acre and 1.5 to 2 cords per acre for most of the 2 properties. There was one stand on the Talmadge property that they didn't recommend any treatment, but anyways, we can talk about that next time if we're going to talk about the management plan next time. That's fine.
Sure. Yeah. All right. Yeah. Thanks. So thank you for taking a look at that.
Yep.
Okay, then easement prop. Okay, properties management, Fenton Ruby, Drobny, War Knowlton Preserve, War Trail maps. Anybody have anything on that? I don't have anything on that at this point.
No.
Well, the trail maps, I think we need to approve some funds to print vinyl maps. And then I still need to talk with Mark. He had offered to do some stainless steel QR codes just to put on the trail map boxes that are map boxes. So if we want to approve some funds at this meeting, I can go ahead and get some quotes from Mark and anything printed.
Great, sounds good. Yeah, as we said on the vinyl trail maps, they gave me a ballpark $2 per copy.
Okay.
And
so
we could get a bunch of those and have a few spares.
I think
we might not need a whole lot for Fenton Ruby just because Mark's metal signs are still up. So we might only need 1 or 2 for Fenton Ruby, but maybe a few more for Knowlton Talmadge. So
I don't know if
I don't know. Yeah, 2 for Fenton Ruby and maybe 5 or so for Knowlton Talmadge. So 7 times, you said $2.
Yeah.
14, and then maybe say another 14 or 15 for the QR codes. So maybe we could estimate $30 to spend, and it'll probably be less, but
I'm going to move that we appropriate up to $50 for the printing of the trail maps and the QR codes.
I'll second.
Now, is that separate from the trail maps that that was voted on last month? There's $100 was voted on last month for up to $100 and anything printed to print trail maps with QR codes. It was $100 authorized at last month's meeting.
Oh, hey,
Somebody,
That,
somebody's reading the minutes.
well, that took care of that.
So
All right, I'll go ahead and get quotes, or, go ahead and order the
on
maps.
page 2 of the minutes, says
Yeah,
3 trail maps.
Yeah,
So-
you're right. You're right, Carol.
So that money's already been appropriated.
Yeah, all right, we're good on that. So Jackie, why don't you go ahead and
Okay.
see what you can get.
thank you.
I'll rescind my comment.
And we don't need the motion, rescind the motions and take that off the floor. We're just more efficient than we think.
Well, at least I finally found the right minutes. I thought at first I had January's minutes for this year. Then I said, oh, I got February's minutes. Then I looked at them and they were February 20 minutes. So with all the waiting for the meeting to convene, I finally found the proper set of
All
minutes.
right.
I had a chance to read them.
Okay, well, glad you did. Town, we would have been spending too much money. Town development, anything jumping? Are we gonna be getting lots and more?
Yeah, we are. The
Where's
place
that from?
is, the place is half, 3/4 stocked already. They're gonna be putting up new signage, not just for the lower part of the plaza, but also for the upper part to try to bring attention to the availability of that area also.
Good. Where's that going? It's going in the old market?
Yeah. And then they're gonna have equipment rental and such in the where the cleaners used to be in the old house there, next to the tracks.
Yeah, I was wondering about that. All right, well, that's good. We got a booming burg here. People gonna be pouring into Wellington. All right.
Planning and zoning, I had read the minutes. Mike D'Amato had mentioned that Loves is hoping to break ground in the spring.
Yeah,
Okay.
And
still, they've still got a few mini hurdles, I guess, with the state. Because the town, I don't think, has started looking for a clerk of the works yet.
right, so they're gonna have to put out an RFP for that.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
Yep.
And there's conditions. Planning and zoning and inland wetlands had put conditions on the approvals for Loves to start.
Quite a few conditions.
Right. Do you know if they've provided the town with documentation? There were things like assessments, water quality assessments, and a few other conservation-minded things, if you will, inland wetlands in particular.
The things, if things are needing to be done, it's going to be done, I believe, by the staff unless it changes significantly from what was approved by the inland wetlands and PZC. I know that they haven't come to the town yet for signage, and I think that's all part of them ironing final items out with the state before they can start.
Okay.
So no real timeline yet, Kathy.
Okay. I just want to be sure that the conditions that were placed upon them for their inland wetlands approval because of the water quality issues. There was also some other habitat assessments they were supposed to do around some of the wetlands. I just want to be sure that those all get done. I'm sure Mike's on top of that, but
Again, they're not to a point of ready to put the shovel in the ground and making sure that all those things are taken into account. I'd be more than happy to let you know when that comes up on an agenda And, you know, that'll be on the town site too. I'm sure you subscribe to that. So you'll get a heads up about that as well. And it's, you know, it's anybody's guess how fast they might be wanting sometime to get it done. It may not be till fall. We
Yeah.
don't know.
I just know the Conservation Commission had submitted comments and recommendations, so I just, that's why I'm following up too.
Yeah, the final approval from PZC was, I don't know, there were 20 plus things.
Mhm.
You know, some of them are quite simple, others not so much.
Okay, anything else on town development? Collaborative organizations, any news from there? I don't have anything, nothing came in. Future park and trail maintenance responsibility, volunteer recruitment efforts. I did put in out a request. I think I forwarded it to everybody. That's heading off our article in the next issue of Wellington Wire. And Kathy made up some signs, one of which was posted at Fenton Ruby on the post where eventually the trail map will go with the QR code. And we got one response from that sign already. A couple folks emailed in and said they put them on the list. They'd be glad to help.
Hey,
They were already on the on the old Friends of Fenton Ruby, and I think they've been out in the park on previous work trips also. And I guess we were talking about maybe sometime having some kind of an info day on a weekend at the park, set up shop maybe in the park and see who we can hail coming down the trails on any particular day, see if we can glad hand some people and feed them some cider and donuts or something. And
Do we want to try to set a date?
not now.
Well, with COVID yet, it's still pretty difficult, Kathy.
Yeah, I think so.
yeah, we're looking April. Well, we're probably not going to do it in April, but we could wait till next month and try to come up with something and for May when the apple trees are in bloom. That old apple tree there is falling apart bit by bit over the Fenton Ruby sign there. But I did ask, as Bob suggested, sent a letter into the town about having them take care of that tree, and they responded with something like, well, I talked about that, and it may be misunderstood. It got something back that said, well, were you going to take it down, or were you going to have somebody take it down? I sent back, I said, no, I thought that would be in the town's purview to take care of that because it's a town area, and then haven't heard anything, but I'll have to bug them again on that. Trouble is if the town if the town puts the bid out to the guys, I shouldn't say, with the big orange trucks, it may take a week for them to do it. So anyway,
Wow.
okay.
There are people in town, plenty of people in town who do tree work. It might be less
Well,
expensive.
you're right. Yeah. Well, we'll see if the town should be able to, it's an easy cut. The town can haul the stuff away and cut it themselves. I would think so. I'll put a bug in there again and see, but
They have a
All right.
contract with the tree company.
Oh,
I think we have to be mindful that if you read the minutes of the Board of Finance, Board of Selectmen, Public Works is very concerned about not having enough staff.
Yep.
So they
Right.
may not be in a position to help us right now.
oh, I understand that completely.
well, all right. But, as Bob, I think, has said that we think the town hires out some, tree work on certain things that the town is not able to handle.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's
The
true
town
or
may
not,
just buy it.
but
The town did just buy a wood chipper, I believe, and they went by just the other day with it. So
Ah.
I assume that they
Oh, you
kinda
could try
work.
again, Pete.
Yeah. Well, we'll just see. All right, Daily Ward, again, we were thinking sometime in the spring, but maybe post-COVID, don't know where things are there. We mentioned a possible candidate, but maybe we could put that on a front burner at the next meeting. Any other old business?
The only thing the one thing that I think maybe we should think about doing is putting up on the signboard at Fenton Ruby, directions on how to get to Knowlton and Talmadge. Because sometimes it occurred to me that when during COVID, when the park was so crowded, that there are a lot of people who just don't know about the Knowlton and Talmadge properties. And maybe if we could say parking lot full here, try our other properties and here's how to get there. Something like that, because, and unfortunately there was an article in the Chronicle about Wellington, and it talked about Fenton Ruby, but it didn't mention that unfortunately Knowlton and Talmadge were not mentioned in that description of things that are offered in, recreational opportunities in Wellington. So, I just think that might be an opportunity for us to try and get more people to use those other properties and not just, become acquainted with those properties as well as the park itself.
I think that's a good idea.
So, just
Anybody willing to write that up?
I can try. Graphic arts is not my specialty, but I
Doesn't have to be graphically.
I think I just thought that it occurred to me that maybe we should be publicizing it, because there were
Sure.
some occasions when where the park was just overflowing, and one time we went, there were 5 cars in the lot, and we turned around and went down to and hiked at Knowlton instead. But we knew about that, and other people really, they're sort of a secret, remain a secret to a lot of people in town.
Well, you started off with something like want a different trail to hike on, or
Yeah.
have you tried the other town trails at blah blah blah.
Yeah, come out to the parking lot here, turn left on Moose Meadow Road, go straight across, follow your nose till you get there.
Sure. Yeah.
Oh, that would be great if you could write something up, Carol.
I'll see what I can
When
do.
you're done, let us know, and we can open up the kiosk and put it up.
Yeah. Okay. Let me see what I can come up with.
Okay. Any other old business? Moving on to new business. Correspondence. Yeah. Just a note, and I sent out some note by what seemed to be a nice lady about our website, and Kathy kind of clued me in, and then we looked back to a previous incident like that, and we guessed it's just a plain crass commercial scam to get commercial outfits to put their websites as links on our website. And it was very similar to a letter. Kathy looked it up. I remembered it, but I didn't go back. It's in another computer that we got 3 or 4 years ago about same kind of thing. My nephew was doing research and found your website, really appreciated, but he did some research and it would be great. He'd love it if you could put this site on, add it to your website. And if you click on it, there is some, it starts off with some nice, easy to digest conservation information that a kid could use. But if you look at the source and where it gets to, it's put out by, commercial organizations that are selling either attorney services, and as in this case, for setting up LLCs for land conservation. So I fired off a response and said, thanks, blah, blah, blah. but, you know, Kathy, being a little more skeptical than I was, said, well, wait a minute. So we compared it to the letter 4 years ago, and it kind of, the reference website or address website was kind of a cockamamie thing, and didn't really look like some private citizen. Anyway, got taken in on that, and I spent a little time on it. But anyway. Any other new business?
I did get an email about the Wellington farm tour for this year. We are
Oh,
going to
okay.
try to have it in June.
Oh,
And
good.
the other participants were wondering if we could get some sponsorship again this year. We had paid for about $100 of advertising last year, or no, 2 years ago.
Probably I just off the top of my head, looking at how much money we have left in the budget, we probably could do that. Would next meeting be soon enough to do that, Jackie?
I'm sorry?
Would the April meeting be soon enough for you to know one way or the other? Or
Yeah, it's gonna be late June most likely, so that should be
So,
fine.
so that'll give you enough lead time if we vote on that. We put it on the agenda for next month.
Yep, I think so.
Yeah, okay.
I would think we could do that too, but yeah, we'll talk about it next month.
Okay, great. Sounds good. I'm glad you're planning on doing it.
Great, glad. Yeah, glad to hear that's going to be taking place.
Yep.
Okay, any other new business?
I just wanted to let you know that Tish had updated the maps that Jackie made on our website. And she also added in and changed the dates for the commission members. Dates of, what would you call them? Service.
Yeah.
Expiration dates.
Expiration.
Yes, when we expire. Yeah.
Right.
So she made some updates to the website, so I wanted to thank her for that.
Yeah, wait a minute, on those maps, you didn't intend that the ones she put on the website have the QR code, is that right?
The ones on the website don't have the QR codes, but then I use that link to make a QR code for the printable ones.
Okay, yeah.
Well, Tish is out of the office for quite a while, I think.
Okay, very good. Okay, making progress now. Anything else?
Couple of other quick things, Peter. Connecticut Trails Day is June 5th through the 6th. And again, we talked about in the past whether or not to sponsor a hike or not. I think we decided not to participate in terms of getting information out on their website, but we still have that option of maybe doing that info day if we wanted to do something like that, just at the park. That's just an idea.
Okay,
And then Wellington Day is going to be Saturday, August 28th. And it's going to be at the River Road Athletic Complex. So just throwing that idea out if we want to put, if we want to have a booth there or not. A booth would be no charge for a nonprofit or a town board. So that's also an opportunity to be available. Again, if anybody wants to think about, Pete and I would be away. But Saturday, August 28th, if somebody is interested in, putting a booth out there for the Conservation Commission.
That might be an opportunity because we actually should be trying to recruit some other alternates. We've got two vacant slots for alternates at this point, and anticipating that there may be some turnover in the commission in the next few years, that maybe would be helpful to get some more people involved so that they're aware of what we do and how we do it.
sure. Yeah.
And maybe recruit some. Pat and Pete, you think we can lean on Patty Phillips?
Well, maybe. Yeah,
Try.
she goes to the park, I think, every day.
Yeah, so, yeah, but I think maybe, you know, if there are people that any of you know that you think are interested in this kind of stuff, then maybe we really should be being a little bit more proactive in doing some recruitment, so we can, you know, have some transition. You know, there may be some vacancies coming up.
Okay, anything else?
One other
Well, we-
quick thing I saw in the
Oh,
minutes,
sorry,
the Board of Selectmen, the town office building is they're planning to open it up on April 19th. So if anybody needs to get in there, I guess you won't need an appointment to do that anymore. They're hoping to open it up on the 19th, so.
Oh, good.
All right. Now, is there anything else? All right, well, long meeting. Thank you, everybody. Covered a lot of stuff here. We'll just see where we go, see how things develop on the Mason Road property, and take it as far as the steps we talked about tonight anyway.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
Thanks.
And
okay,
And
bye.